Ron Beckett and Jerry Conlog, professors at Quinnipiac University and hosts of National Geographic's The Mummy Roadshow, composed part of the team that would examine this rare collection of mummies.
When people die, they usually decompose, and turn to ashes, back to the elements from which they came. A mummy is an individual or an animal in which this decomposition process has stopped, so that they don't return back to the earth. They're sort of frozen in time in some biological form.
Using state-of-the-art portable imaging equipment, Professors Conlog and Beckett set up shop in a Detroit warehouse and began the painstaking process of bringing these mummies to life.
Every mummy can be a teacher if you know how to read the text. And learning how to read the text isn't that mysterious. You just have to have the time and the patience. You begin by looking at the mummy, observing it. We look at them and then we conduct some radiographs, some paleoimaging. We find out new information, a new question to be answered.
Paleoimaging, or the imaging of ancient objects, is a critical technique in examining this collection. In this case, it can include radiographs, also known as X-rays, endoscopies, and computer tomography scanning.
Paleoimaging of the mummies of Guanajuato is really kind of a unique opportunity to look at a large group of mummies. Generally, we'll see one or two mummies. You don't see a whole group, and they're also over a long period of time, like 100 years. So we could see the health of that population over time. And that's all down the left side.
Left side.
Yeah.
Left side.
Oh, this is the one that's supposed to have... The X-rays that I shot here at the Detroit Science Center are two basic images, one from the front and one from the side. And it kind of gives us a 3D impression about what's inside the mummy.
Do you want me to turn on the light to see if the shadows goes?
If we can see it.
I don't think we're going to.
Let me kind of fade this out. Yeah. See, it's got your toe.
What's very unique about the mummies here is the way that they're going to be displayed challenged us to take these huge radiographs. And to do that, we had to incorporate a forklift to hold the X-ray tube to get enough distance. X-ray.
Mummy studies is really a great example of teamwork because it's truly a multidisciplinary science. My role is endoscopy, and the endoscope is a small miniature camera that you can actually pass inside the different cavities of the body, the thoracic cavity, the chest cavity, the abdominal pelvic cavity, and the cranial vault inside the skull. If I can see any residual organs or lung tissue, that's important because the X-ray sometimes just blasts through them. They're not very dense. But if I can physically see them with the endoscope, we can see how well they've been preserved in their organ systems as well. You got your number on that one, Jerry? That's intriguing. Okay, there it is again. What we're finding is some textile inside of this mummy. And granted, there's a gaping opening hole there, but the question is, was this textile used for some kind of a burial significance? Or was it used for some kind of medical procedure, medical significance? It's a lace-like textile. It looks like it has some embroidered openings in it. So I would suspect it was more of a burial object that ended up inside. Interesting. Yeah, I've never seen anything quite like that.
This is an interesting group of mummies because they represent the common everyday people of Mexico. So what we found, a number of cases that suggest tuberculosis. And we see things like degenerative changes. People who worked hard developing arthritis. And those are things that you would expect to find in an everyday population. But I think it helps us to connect with the individuals.
This project generated great excitement among the local scientific community. Institutions such as Oakwood Hospital in Dearborn, Michigan, were eager to lend computer tomography scanners to aid in the research.
A regular X-ray is a two-dimensional image of a three-dimensional object. CT, or computed tomography, takes slices. Where is that calcified node that we found that suggests tuberculosis? With the CT scan, you can see the exact location of it. We can measure it. We can get a better sense of the disease that you can't see with regular X-ray.
Looks like there's something hot there in the thorax.
Yeah, there's one.
Oh, yeah, one there. I don't know.
Many of the mummies in this collection end up with names. And mummy number 27 is called La Bruja, or the witch. And when you look at this woman's x-rays, you can see that she had a very severe case of arthritis. She was very old, and she was probably hunched over when she walked. She had a very characteristic posture. Not only that, when we did the CT scan, we could see that her arteries had a lot of calcifications, plaque in them. This was not a healthy individual, and her days must have been extremely uncomfortable getting through the day. And again, I think you can really connect with someone when you see this. It's just not looking at the mummy. Now that we can see inside, she's telling us what her life was like.
When confronted with the controversy of displaying human remains, Professor Conlog assures skeptics that studying these mummies gives us insight into a community rich in culture and tradition.
Some people feel it is totally wrong to display human remains. But for us, I think it's very important. These are individuals who lived during that period. They have all that information within their bodies that they can tell us what their lives like, what diseases were in the past. If they were buried, all that information would be gone. One of the things I think is really important in this context is that when we read about the Incas, the only thing that we know about the Inca are from their conquerors, the conquistadors. They must have had a skewed impression of what the Inca were like. Now when we start looking at those mummies, we can see that their life was very different than what was portrayed by their conquerors. So these are the actual people who lived during that period. They're going to be most honest in telling us what their life was like, not a secondhand source writing about it.
About right here inside. You can almost... We've been working with the mummies from Guanajuato since 2001. We were very, very excited that the Detroit Science Center was able to get this exhibit here to the United States, the way that it's put together so professionally and will be displayed so respectfully. They've taken great pains to reproduce the environment, therefore reproducing the context from which these mummies come. And that's very important about displaying mummies. If we have just a mummy on display and say nothing about it, it's just voyeurism. But if we say this mummy came from a crypt just like this one, in an area just like this, it puts me there. Now we understand. This was a person who lived in this community. Now we add the paleoimaging and some of the CT scanning, and the information comes out. Not only do we know where they came from and a little bit how they became a mummy, what their life was like. So you get this whole story, and I get chills even talking about it because it's like going there without going there.